Hello and welcome to the Performance Car Podcast. My name is Scott Newman, Associate Editor of Motor Magazine.
And I'm Dylan Campbell, Editor of Motor Magazine.
And in the back recording this, we've got Josh Robinson.
Hello.
Before we get into today's topic, a quick word about our new issue. On sale now, featuring 30 years of HSV on the cover. You can find that as a print mag or online in a digital format for iPad, etc. So, today we're in an Audi S Q7, which is Audi's new performance flagship of the Q7 range. It's powered by a 4-litre twin-turbo V8 diesel engine, producing 320 kilowatts and 900 newton metres. It weighs almost 2.3 tonnes, but despite that, you can still hit 100 k's an hour in 4.8 seconds. This one we're sitting in is $177,616, thanks to a smattering of options. We've got metallic paint, LED headlights, 21-inch wheels, which don't look that big on this car actually. We've got leather and a dynamic package, which brings a sport differential, all-wheel steering, and the clever active anti-roll bars. So, all very important on a performance SUV. And that brings us to our topic today of performance SUVs. We're going to be talking a bit about the whole concept. Is it a good idea? Which cars we like, which cars we don't. So, Dylan, I'll bring you in at this point. The performance SUV, what do you think of the concept? You know, it's the go-to car now. You've got to have one in your range. So, what do you think of the whole fast people carrier?
Yeah, I suppose initially when the whole performance SUV thing started taking off, it was a little bit offensive to people like us. It was this thing that was like a bit of an imposter niche, I suppose, where someone just got an SUV, like this big hulking thing that its original purpose was to go off-road, and now people, now manufacturers are putting huge engines in them, giving them huge power outputs, and just putting sporting badges on them and calling them performance SUVs. So
they're sort of custom designed to annoy purists, aren't they?
That's right. So initially we were very skeptical about the performance SUV craze, but it is a craze because people are buying them, and what's interesting is that they're getting better.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Funny you should say that, because the original performance SUV was kind of the ML55 AMG. I think it was 1998 or something like that. And that was kind of just an off-roader, a big four-wheel drive with a big engine in it. Had the 5.5 litre V8. But I guess how we know them now as proper sports cars, almost proper performance cars, was the Porsche Cayenne Turbo 2003, which was the first car to sort of say it could do it all. It could go off-road, and it could also, hoon around the Nürburgring if it needed to. And since then, it's gained popularity, and everyone is offering one. But why do you think people are attracted to this sort of car? Because whoever brings one out, it's an instant hit. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I suppose it's the whole compromise thing. Like, you've only got one spot in the garage, and you might want, for example's sake, a C63 coupe, but you have a partner who does not want a C63 coupe. So you've got to sort of bargain with your partner, I suppose, on that car that'll fit in your one-car garage. You want the practicality of an SUV, or in theory, the practicality of an SUV, a big boot, the high driving position, which you might personally not be very interested in, but your partner might be. But at the same time, you want an awesome noise, you want a lot of grunt, and if you're out on a skiing holiday, you want to be able to go up a twisty road and have your partner lean across to you and slap you on the wrist and say, "What are you? Slow down, you're going way too fast."
We bought this car so you didn't drive like that.
That's right.
So, when did you first get introduced to the performance SUV concept? What was one of the first ones you drove? Can you remember?
Yeah, the X5M, the previous generation X5M was the first performance SUV I drove. I just remember it feeling enormous. It was this big, burly, heavy car. It felt physically enormous as you drove it. Obviously, you sat really high in it. It had enormous tyres on it, had an awesome amount of grunt, and it was a physical car to drive, and it just felt like too much weight, too much power, too much rubber. It was a bit of a confused car, and I remember coming away thinking it's like a hot hatch that weighs twice as much as it should. So
yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting car though, because I remember one of my first exposure was when I went on a test with Motor. It was a 5 SUV test. We had the BMW X5M, which was new at the time, the Range Rover Sport Supercharged V8, the Range Rover V8 Supercharged, the Mercedes ML63 AMG, and the Audi Q7 V12 TDI, which I guess was kind of the spiritual predecessor to this car, even though it was even more insane. But the X5M like whopped them all. Like the motor then took them to Wakefield Park, which was kind of strange seeing these SUVs lapping a racetrack.
Yeah.
But the X5M was something crazy. It was like 4 or 5 seconds faster than the next best car. So it was interesting that car kind of took the concept to the next level, because we both know you drive that car and it does kind of feel like a big Golf R. It's amazing that car can be so capable. And for me, I guess that car almost gets closest, along with maybe a Porsche Cayenne Turbo S, to providing the best of both worlds. So I guess it moves on to, what have you driven that you've liked, that you can see fitting into your, life as that do-everything performance car?
Yeah, I suppose they're not all made equal performance SUVs. Like,
No,
of all
not
the
at all.
like all the performance niches, it's interesting. There's such a broad spectrum of talent in the performance SUV class. Some are pretty good for what they are. Some are completely terrible. And for me, it's still the BMW that stands out. It's got heaps of grunt. Like, it's matured a lot and it's gotten a lot better over the years. But now, for me, like you were saying, it feels like a big, heavy hot hatch almost, and it still sort of does. You can go for a really fast drive in that car, and it's really satisfying. Like, it actually is quite good. So I think that's the car that I'd park in the garage if I had to have a performance SUV. And it's important to point out that I would prefer not to have one, but if I had to.
It's one of the few SUVs that has the diff set up to actually sort of power oversteer, which is a very strange thing.
Yes.
To the engineers that created it must have been going, why are we doing this? Why are we making this thing go sideways?
Yes.
But it does work. For me, though, it's interesting that the X5M kind of fails because it is trying to be everything. It is a really good car. It's very impressive in what it does. It's very quick. It does a good job of attempting to be a performance car. But for me, it's kind of gets to that jack of all trades, master of none a bit. If you take it for a fast drive, it is impressive, but impressive in a way that, like a Golf R is. It's not suddenly a 911 or anything like that. Whereas, and then as an SUV, it works quite well. But for me, it doesn't really sound that great. I'm not a huge fan of that engine. So for me, it's not the best by any means. But I really like the Mercedes AMG GLE 63 because it doesn't really handle at all, which. It's still an off-roader.
Yeah.
You drive it and the ESP is going mad and it's pitching and rolling and all over the place and it's basically going, please slow down. But it's still a beautiful SUV. It's got a great interior. It's got plenty of space. And it's got this rocket ship under the bonnet that makes an insane noise. So I figure that for where you're going to drive these cars, doing the school run, driving them to work, maybe to the ski fields or something, you've basically got this normal four-wheel drive that happens to go like a scalded cap and make it a great noise. So it's interesting for me that in one way, the more they try and make them the jack of all trades, to me they're almost a little bit less appealing. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's like a limit that you can reach with these cars. Like, it's an SUV. It's inherently a large car. If it's got a higher ride height kind of thing, so it can go off road. The best performance SUV is still going to be compromised because it is an SUV.
We take this car for an example. I mean, it's quick. It sounds good. It sounds amazingly good for a diesel. Whether it's a real sound or not is a point of conjecture. But it drives quite well. It's reasonably comfortable. But you can never get away from its size and weight in any sense, which is why the whole jack of all trades thing kind of doesn't work, because it's enormous. So whenever you're parking it and using it as a car, you're hamstrung because of the size, and even the ride quality, you can still feel the weight. And then obviously in a performance sense, it's still 2.3 tons, and it's going to, it's got all this amazing technology under it. It's got this 48 volt. It's one of the first cars to have a 48 volt electrical system. So it can run this electric compressor on the engine to eliminate turbo lag. It's got the clever active anti-roll bars that can eliminate, body roll and try and keep it under. But you can't fight physics. And for me, I suppose the ultimate version of that is the Range Rover Sport SVR, which is quite a good car. But they came out with a big fuss about that car, in that I did a crazy lap around the Nürburgring. I can't remember what it was, 8 minutes something, 8 minutes 13, 8 minutes 8 or something, which is about the same as a Renault Megane. But you drive it and it's just not that impressive on the road. And then I did a feature with it in Tasmania, and while it was great, at no point did it really offer anything that a normal Range Rover Sport would have done, which is kind of confusing. Like, it went off-road fine, it went around corners pretty well, but so does a normal one. So we get to this point of these cars are sort of hopelessly compromised by physics in trying to be everything to everyone, but it still doesn't really solve the problem. It doesn't seem to matter because everyone wants to buy one. So I guess it doesn't matter what we want. What we think, it's answering a question that the market has.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? Like, they're selling lots of them.
And then a purist can jump up and down and go, this isn't right, just buy a wagon. And the thought of this engine in like an A6 wagon that weighs 400, 500 kilos less, I mean, imagine that. It'd be a rocket ship.
Yeah, it'd be baby RS6 pretty much. Yeah.
It's I guess this is the perfect example of why the performance car market or the car buying market isn't necessarily rational, because on paper you'd buy a wagon because it's just as practical, and it's more fuel efficient, and it's faster, and it's better to drive. But how do you feel about the whole high driving position? That's what apparently sells these cars. Do you find that a boon? Do you find that an advantage?
I mean, personally, I don't really mind too much, how high I'm sitting. Sometimes you get out of like one of these cars where you're sitting quite high and you get into the lower car and you find yourself sort of craning your neck a little bit because you've grown used to the high riding position. But there's so many SUVs on the road these days that it's becoming like a thing that the high riding position is just the normal position now.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, isn't it? It's like if you had the penthouse suite on a 9-story apartment block, and then all these other 9-story apartment blocks went up, you've lost your view, you've lost your point.
What's next? Everybody going to be driving around and jacked up like Hiluxes and Hummers and stuff like that, like with 3 metre high driving positions?
Yeah, so what always amuses me though is when you get in a car like a Porsche Macan's like this, they've made a real effort to get the driving position as low as possible because it's a Porsche.
Yeah.
And I think the Mazda like CX-3 is a bit like this as well. So they've made an elevated driving position and then tried to get the seat as low as possible, which defeats the purpose of having an elevated drive.
Yeah, so many customers are buying those cars for the high driving position. Yeah. So if you try and make the position as low as possible,
so you just end up wearing a normal wagon.
Why not just make a hatch?
So, the other tidbit I love is that the Porsche Macan's got a dry sump engine to lower the centre of gravity. It's like, what? What's going on?
Build a car with inherently a high centre of gravity and then try and engineer it out.
Yeah, we could have just made a lower car.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I often wonder whether the engineers find these cars like a really good challenge, or they just want to bang their heads up and bring it to the brick wall. It's like, make this huge thing go around a racetrack.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, crazy.
The engineers that used to work on the sports cars, but they've been pushed over to work on the SUV.
And I mean, it's an interesting thing. Like the last Q7, I think, is one of the better driving Audis in terms of the way it steered. It felt quite natural to drive. So it is interesting that, and why wouldn't these are big selling cars, so their best engineers are probably on these projects.
Well, that's right. These are the cars that make the money for the car companies. So you're going to put your best engineers onto them. Sports cars don't make as much money as volume sellers like this.
And what do we think about the technology in this car? I mean, you were complaining earlier about the lane keep assist, which constantly nudges the steering whether you want it to or not. And I mean, this car is the ultimate technology poster child with the 48-volt system. It's got active everything. It's got all-wheel steering. It's got every driver safety. We've got a virtual cockpit here, a digital dash, and it's crazy. But do you feel like do you find yourself using this technology and embracing it, or is it getting in the way of your driving experience?
I mean, it's an interesting one. Like, obviously, this is as new as cars get, basically. Like, this car has all Audi's latest technology in it, and I personally find myself just wanting to switch off all the assists, like lane keep assist, and like we're driving down the road at the moment on a very busy freeway, and the car's popping up telling me that I'm too close to cars in front when I don't feel that I am.
That means you're too close to the cars in front?
That's right. I can feel that it is, like you were saying, it's tugging on the steering wheel with the active lane keep assist.
That's really annoying, I find, because it's so subtle that you don't notice it
for
a while, and then you're like, why is this car, is it tramlining really badly or something? And then, and it still won't actually, if you just let go of the steering and it's not paying attention, the system will still let you drive off the road. So it's kind of, it's not quite it's not quite there, or like you, I just turned it off. So
Yeah, I wish there was a button here that made it really easy, but that's for people like us who are like single percentage customers.
stubborn, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think like they've made this car for a customer. Do most customers who buy this car, are they actually going to use this technology and get a lot out of it? And it's just going to irritate people like us who would rather not have it, who are in the minority. I hope that's not the case. I kind of like fantasize that normal people who buy this car get in and want to turn all that stuff off, but I don't think that's the case.
Well, we haven't really come to a conclusion about the performance SUVs because they're not really for us. I guess the conclusion is they're not really for the purists, but they're selling like mad, so it's not very surprising that they're selling them, that they're building them like crazy as well. I mean, one car that I am quite interested about though is the new Mercedes GLC 63, which is a Merc's baby SUV kind of, but they've put the C63 drivetrain in it with 500 horsepower. So that I'm quite looking forward to it on a pure lunacy level. So for me, I guess maybe the sillier they are, the better they are. Is that maybe that's the conclusion to the performance SUV? If you're going to be crazy, go crazy.
I think so. I think you've got to go into it with the right mindset. You can't jump in one of these cars and think that it's going to be like just a larger, more practical sort of like C63 wagon, say if it is like a GLE 63, or in the case like this, it's going to be like a more practical, RS4 or RS6 or something like that. You got to go in thinking it's like a big, heavy SUV, and it's going to be a bit pokier, a bit faster. It's going to have stronger brakes. It's going to have more grip. Cars like this with active roll bars, it's going to sit flatter. It's going to be a better car from a performance perspective. But is it still a performance car?
Yeah, that's the key issue. Well, what do you think? Are you pro performance SUVs? Do you hate them? Do you love one? Do you love them? Do you own one? Let us know in the comments below. We'll be back with another motor podcast in the near future. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. As ever, anything you want us to cover, let us know in the comments below. And don't forget, new issue of Motor on sale now.